Hello and welcome. Have you ever watched someone go from nothing to everything and then lose it all in front of the whole world? This isn't just a story about fame or music or scandals. This is the story of a boy born in a forgotten city, someone who danced his way into history and then disappeared. Courtrooms, conspiracy theories. You think you know Michael Jackson? You don't. Because behind the glitter, the glow, and the moonwalk, there's a story that's darker, stranger, and more human than you've ever been told. And once we start, you won't look at him the same way again. Michael Jackson. Let me take you back to the United States, to a city called Gary. Ever heard of it? Probably not, but go ahead, type Gary, Indiana into a search engine and check the image tab. What do you see? Crumbling buildings, abandoned lots, empty streets. It looks like something straight out of a post-apocalyptic movie. Today, many call it a ghost town. But believe it or not, Gary wasn't always like this. In fact, back in the 50s, it was full of life. Picture this: theaters popping up, schools being built, and factories running day and night. It was one of the key industrial hubs in America, home to a massive steel plant called Gary Works. This place was the heartbeat of the city. It supplied steel across the country. Practically every man in town worked there. And one of those men was Joseph Jackson. In the mid-50s, Joseph worked as a crane operator. His days started before the sun came up and ended only when it set. He'd come home exhausted, where his wife Catherine and their 6 kids were waiting. 2 girls, Latoya and Rebby, and the 4 boys, Jackie, Tito, Jermaine, and Marlon. The whole family squeezed into a tiny one-story house and struggled to make ends meet. To keep family afloat, both Joseph and Catherine picked up extra work whenever they could. Catherine sometimes worked at Seas as a sales clerk. Joseph, he turned to music. He played in a small band called the Falcons with his brother. They mostly performed in local bars, and if they got lucky, they'd land a gig in Chicago. The money, barely enough to scrape by. But Joseph had a dream. He wanted to make it big in music, get signed by a label, become famous, maybe even rich. Only it never happened. One audition after another, and still nothing. Producers didn't see any promise in the band. And back then, there weren't many opportunities for African American artists. The rejections piled up, and slowly but surely, frustration started to eat away at Joseph. And then he changed. The pressure, the constant disappointments, they turned him bitter, angry. At home, he became strict, harsh, sometimes violent. If an audition went badly, the kids felt it. He'd yell, lash out, take his anger out of the very people who looked up to him. One day in January '58, Joseph came home in one of his usual fall moods. But this time, before things could escalate, Catherine stopped him. She had something important to share. She gathered the whole family in the living room and told them the news. She was pregnant again. Now, for kids, this wasn't exactly a cause for celebration. A 7th child, that meant more mouths to feed, more pressure on Joseph, and probably more of his angry outbursts. But Catherine, she had a feeling, she believed this child would be different, that he would change everything, and she was right. On 29 August 1958, the child was born. The very first thing Catherine noticed were his big, expressive eyes. And the moment he heard any sound, he would react, trying to imitate it almost instinctively. They named him Michael. And that little boy from Gary, Indiana, would one day take the Jackson name global. He would rise higher than anyone could ever imagine and become the most iconic and controversial artist the world has ever seen. You would think that after Michael was born, something in the Jackson household might have changed for the better. A new baby usually brings hope, right? But no. If anything, things got even tougher. Joseph was still barely scraping together enough to feed his growing family, and the pressure only intensified. To cope, he learned harder into one thing he could control: music practice. He pushed his older sons relentlessly, demanding they rehearsed day after day as if that was the only ticket out of poverty. And little Michael? At first no one really paid much attention to him except Catherine. While the older kids were busy learning instruments and rehearsing vocal parts, stuff like that, she saw something in her youngest. She started playing records for him constantly. Her favorites were jazz, blues and soul. Ray Charles, Louis Armstrong, Duke Ellington, Miles Davis. The house might have been small and crowded, but it was filled with music. As soon as Michael could walk, Catherine noticed something magical. Whenever the music played, he would start to move, dancing to the rhythm, totally in sync, like it was second nature. But what really made her eyes widen was one moment in front of the TV. Michael saw Bill Bailey performing those smooth moves, that stage presence, and immediately he tried to mimic every step. He didn't just copy the dance, he lived it. Even after the show ended, he kept dancing around the room. Catherine was amazed. She knew there was something special there. So, naturally, she told Joseph. But Joseph didn't see it the same way. When he asked Michael to show him what he could do, the boy eagerly danced for his father, hoping to impress him. But instead, Joseph exploded. He yelled, he said it was all nonsense, that no one danced like that. And then, in a fit of rage, he hit Michael. Imagine that, a 4-year-old just dancing from joy, trying to make his parents proud, and met not with applause, but with violence. And no one stepped in to stop it. Still, Michael didn't give up. As he got older, around the age of 4, he started trailing his brothers around the house like a little shadow. He watched them rehearse, play instruments, sing harmonies. He asked to join in, begged them to teach him. They didn't always have the time, but that didn't stop him. Michael just started singing and dancing alongside them anyway, copying, learning, absorbing everything like a sponge. Eventually, the little jam sessions became a sort of family ritual. When Joseph got home, the boys would show him what they've learned that day. And one night, watching all his sons perform together, something clicked for Joseph. What if his old dream, that one that never worked for him, could be reborn through his kids? That was the turning point. Joseph put the boys on a strict routine. No more playing outside. Every day was now dedicated to music. The older brothers handled the instruments, while the youngest, Michael and Marlon, brought the energy with their dancing and high-pitched vocals. Slowly but surely, this little group of siblings became a polished, tight-knit act. Now they just needed an audience. Joseph found a flyer for a local school talent show and signed the boys up. He called the group the Jackson Brothers. They rehearsed the Temptations' My Girl, over and over until every note and move was perfect. And when the day of the competition came, they crushed it. The crowd went wild, especially for Michael. This tiny kid with huge stage presence stole the show, singing his heart out, dancing like he was born to perform. He even kicked off his shoes and danced barefoot. The judges didn't hesitate. The Jackson brothers took home the grand prize. After the show, a man named Gordon Keith approached. He owned a small label, Steeltown Records, and though it wasn't doing great at the time, he saw something in a group. For the first time ever, someone was offering the Jackson a chance. Soon, Joseph and Gordon made a deal. Steeltown would help record and promote the band. The boys added songs by James Brown and other soul legends. Around this time, Joseph also changed the group's name. They were no longer the Jackson Brothers, they were the Jackson 5. And then they hit the road. Okay, road might be a stretch. They mostly performed in local bars and tiny clubs around Gary. But it was something. And even those modest gigs started bringing in money. Eventually, Joseph landed a regular spot for the boys at the place called Mr. Lucky's. Now here's where it gets strange. Mr. Lucky's was a strip club. That's right, Michael and Marlon weren't even 10, and they were warming up crowds at a club meant for adults. The boys would sing and dance their hearts out, doing their best to win over the audience. For each show they earned $2, plus whatever tips people threw onto the stage. $2, a strip club. Childhood performances. Sounds unreal, right? But that was the beginning of the Jackson 5. One night, during their regular gig at Mr. Lucky's, Joseph came with a, well, let's call it a showbiz idea. A gimmick, really. During one of the songs, at the line "Look under her skirt," he told little Michael to run into the crowd and, yep, literally pick on the women's skirts. And the crowd loved it. People laughed, cheered and threw more money at Michael than the group had ever seen. That little stunt became the highlight of the night. Guests came just to see the bold kid with the big eyes and fearless moves. For Joseph, it was a win. More tips, more money, more attention. Meanwhile, the group's momentum was building. They were still doing local talent shows and winning almost every single one. Word started spreading. There was something special about these 5 kids from Gary. But for Joseph, that wasn't enough. He knew Gordon Keith had opened the door for them. But if they really wanted to break out, they needed someone at the top. That meant Motown. Motown Records wasn't just a label. It was a powerhouse that launched the careers of Marvin Gaye, Diana Ross, Stevie Wonder, basically the Mount Rushmore of black music royalty. And the man behind it all? Berry Gordy, legendary, strict, a perfectionist. Joseph started sending demo tapes to Motown. Then he went further. Every day he would call, hoping to catch someone, anyone. He even made the kids take shifts waiting for the phone. Don't miss the call, he would warn. It could change everything. Weeks passed, then months. Nothing. And in the middle of this all, the Jackson family grew again. A new baby girl was born, Janet. Then, just 1 month later, finally, the phone rang. It was Motown. They wanted the Jackson to come to Detroit for an audition. From that moment, the entire household kicked into overdrive. Joseph put the kids into full rehearsal mode. So intense, the older boys stopped going to school. When the big day came, they headed to Motown's headquarters. The boys performed their hearts out. Every song carefully practiced, every step perfectly timed. The audition was filmed, but the room stayed quiet. Most of the staff looked unimpressed, except for the one man, Ralph Zeltzer. He saw something different. After the performance, he pulled Berry Gordy aside and said, "You need to watch this tape. There's something special here. One of those boys, he's got fire in his eyes." And you can probably guess who he meant. A few days later, Berry Gordy watched the footage, and he was blown away. But here's the twist: he didn't rush to sign them. Why? Because Gordy had been down for this role before. Kids were a lot of work. They needed supervision, patience, and constant coaching. And most producers would rather skip the drama, but still, he couldn't shake the feeling that little boy, Michael, had something rare, something big. After sitting on it for nearly a month, Gordy made a decision. He'd take the gamble. He signed the Jacksons with a very specific plan in mind. Eventually, he would break out Michael as a solo star. The deal came together fast. Gordy bought out the rights to the Jackson 5 and met with Joseph to lay down the law. And it wasn't exactly a warm, fuzzy partnership. Here were the terms. Berry Gordy had full creative control. Everything. What the boys sang, how they dressed, how they performed went through him. All song rights belonged to Motown. The Jacksons would perform, but the label owned it all. PR, media, interviews, also controlled by Motown. And lastly, the family would have to move to Los Angeles. That's where the industry was, and if they wanted success, they had to move without questions asked. Was the contract, its conditions, tough? Honestly, yes, but in 1969, Joseph signed it. And just like that, Motown got to work. The Jackson 5 were officially stepping into the world stage. As soon as Berry Gordy signed the Jackson 5, he made his first big move. He relocated the kids to Los Angeles. New city, new life, new rules. He spent a day with them in the studio, just watching, observing, and something stood out almost immediately. Michael didn't really click with the older brothers. They barely talked to him. He tried to join in, to connect, but there was a clear split. The older boys kept to themselves, and Michael mostly hung around with Malone. For Gordy, that wasn't a problem. In fact, it was an opportunity. The less Michael bonded with the group, the easier he was to influence. So Gordy pulled him aside for one-on-one chat. They talked about music, ate ice cream, just two people hanging out. Then Michael, opening up like kids do when they feel safe, told Gordy about his father, the discipline, the punishments. And that's when Gordy said something that would change everything. He leaned in and told Michael, "One day you'll be a very famous artist. Not with your brothers, not with your father, just you." Then he added, "For now, keep singing with them, but remember, you're more talented than all of them." For an 11-year-old who was used to being yelled at or ignored, those words were everything. Suddenly, Michael had someone who believed in him. Gordy became his hero, the first adult who looked at him in his eyes and said, "You're special." Not long after that, Berry made another move. He split up the boys. The older brothers were sent to a small, dark apartment. Michael and Malone, they were sent somewhere completely different, Diana Ross' house. And for the two youngest Jacksons, it was like stepping into a dream. Imagine it, a huge house in the Hollywood Hills, a sparkling backyard pool, ice cream in the fridge every single day, and best of all, Peter Pan on TV whenever they wanted. Diana Ross herself even gave Michael private vocal lessons, taught him how to carry himself, how to spark in public. She became a kind of second mother to him. Michael was in heaven, but heaven didn't last long. After a month, Catherine and Joseph moved to LA. They bought a modest house and the whole family was back under one roof again. And just like that, the peace was gone. Michael's world returned to what it had always been. Chaos, shouting, tension. Joseph was back in charge. The older brothers took out their jealousy on him. And Michael, he missed Diana Ross terribly. Funny how a house full of people can make you feel more alone than ever. Meanwhile, back at Motown, the team was hard at work trying to find the Jackson 5 a hit. They wrote song after song, but nothing really clicked. Gordy wasn't impressed. He started to worry. Maybe the whole thing was a mistake. And then a twist of fate. One day, someone brought him a demo track originally meant for another Motown artist, Gladys Knight. Gordy listened once, then again. That was it. That was the hit he'd been waiting for. He didn't hesitate. He said, "This one not going to Gladys. This one for the Jacksons." The song? I Want You Back. The boys spent over a month recording it, polishing every note, perfecting the harmonies. When it was ready, Gordy booked them a spot on the Hollywood Palace, a major TV variety show. The group took the stage in matching green suits, standing beside Diana Ross. It was picture perfect. But right before the performance, Barry made one more bold move. He asked Diana to introduce them not as a group of 5 equal brothers, but as something different. On live TV, she stepped forward and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5. Backstage, Joseph lost it. He stormed over to Gordy, furious. "All my kids are talented. You can't just single out Michael like that." But Gordy stood firm. "You take care of your boys. I'll take care of this show." And while they argued behind the scenes, the kids nailed the performance. Michael sparked under the spotlight, commanding attention in a way that couldn't be taught. It was magnific. Right after this show, I Want You Back hit the radio and took off like wildfire. More TV invitations followed. One of the biggest came from the Ed Sullivan Show. And this time, the cameras barely left Michael's face. All of this was part of Gordy's long-term strategy. Make Michael Jackson the face that world would remember. In December 1969, the group dropped their debut album, Diana Ross Presents Jackson 5. 4 of its singles shot to the top of the charts. By 1970, the Jacksons were on a full US tour. Tens of thousands of fans in every city. In their hometown of Gary, the crowd was so massive, the group had to fly by helicopter. That first tour earned the Jackson family $500,000. And in 1971, to lock the hype, Gordy went even further. He arranged for the Jacksons to star in their own Hollywood sitcom. The little boy from Gary was now America's biggest rising star. But the story of Michael Jackson was only just beginning. But this is where things started getting rough for Michael Jackson. It was 1971, he was 13 years old, and well, being 13 isn't easy for anyone. But for Michael, who was already in the public eye, already performing, already carrying the weight of fame, it hit even harder. His face broke out in acne, his nose, already a sore subject, looked even wider as he grew. And guess what his brothers did? They teased him. They gave him cruel nicknames like Pimple Face and Big Nose, over and over. Now imagine hearing that not just from classmates or strangers, but from your own family. That's when something shifted inside Michael. He became obsessed with his appearance, not in a vain teenage way. This went deeper. He developed body dysmorphia, a condition where you fixate on a perceived flaws that no more else might even notice. But to you, they're all you can see. He started avoiding mirrors. He would shower in the dark just so he wouldn't have to look at himself. He felt uncomfortable in his own skin, and yet he still got up on stage and gave 100%, smiling, dancing, performing like nothing was wrong. In 1972, Berry Gordy made a big move. He decided it was time for Michael to release a solo album. And that sparked another family storm. Joseph, as always, insisted Michael wasn't better than his brothers. The older boys started to resent him even more. The bullying got worse, but Gordy pushed forward, and Michael quietly went into the studio to record Got to Be There, his debut solo album. The album did okay, not a blockbuster, but the next song, a surprise hit. It was a gentle ballad called Ben, originally written for a movie about a boy and his pet rat. And yet Michael's voice turned it into something beautiful. Ben soared to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and was even nominated for an Oscar for Best Original Song. The world has fallen in love with Michael Jackson. Gordy quickly put together a second solo album, but despite the growing solo success, Michael was still very much a member of the Jackson 5. In 1973, the group went on a world tour. They played in Japan, Europe, all across the US, filling arenas, charming fans, living the dream. And during a show in Las Vegas, something unforgettable happened. They met Elvis Presley. Michael got to shake hands with the king of rock and roll. Elvis complimented his performance, and Michael was starstruck. But there was someone else in the room too. Elvis' daughter, Lisa Marie. She had long, beautiful hair, and Michael couldn't take his eyes off her. No one knew it then, but that girl would come back into his life much later, at a very difficult time. We'll talk about that moment later, but for now, let's go back to 73. After the world tour, the Jacksons were rich, really rich. Joseph bought a big house, and for the first time, it seemed like they had everything they would ever dreamed of. But happiness still nowhere to be found. Catherine discovered that Joseph had been cheating on her during the tour. She decided to file for divorce, but Berry Gordy intervened. He told her that the public sees the Jackson as a perfect family. A divorce would ruin that image and possibly the group's success. So Catherine backed down, and just like that, the Jacksons kept playing the part of the perfect family. Even their home life turned into a daily war zone. Michael dealt with it the only way he knew how. He buried himself in work. He danced, he choreographed, he created new moves, he started writing songs. Music became both his escape and his identity. In 1973, he released his third solo album, Music and Me, which sold over 2 million copies. 2 years later, he released Forever Michael, his last album with Berry Gordy. Why? Because change was coming. For years, Joseph had been getting offers from other record labels, offers to poach the Jackson from Motown, but none of them ever matched what the Gordy was offering, until Epic came along. Epic was part of CBS Records and run by a powerful producer named Walter Yetnikov, someone who had worked with legends like Bob Dylan, Paul McCartney and Mick Jagger. He knew talent when he saw it. Epic made an offer that blew everything else out of the water. The Jacksons would get to write their own songs, and here's the kicker: they would receive 20% of the revenue from each record. That was 10 times what they were getting from Motown. Joseph didn't hesitate. Without even consulting with his kids, he called a press conference and announced that the Jacksons were leaving Motown for Epic Records. Everyone was caught off guard, Berry Gordy included. Gordy tried to negotiate, tried to change Joseph's mind, but Joseph was done. He wanted control, he wanted more money, he wanted out. And so Motown sued the Jacksons. Eventually, the legal battle between Motown and the Jacksons came to an end. Both sides reached a settlement. Berry Gordy sold their contract for a huge sum, but kept one of the important things: the rights for the name, the Jackson 5, which meant the group couldn't use it anymore. From that moment on, they became simply the Jacksons. While the rest of the family was busy celebrating their freedom, a new start, Michael felt different. Something didn't sit right with him. He felt guilty for how things had ended with Gordy, his mentor, his hero. So he did something brave. Michael went to talk to him, one-on-one. He walked in, looked Gordy in the eyes, and asked, "What should I do now?" And Gordy, usually the calm, composed producer, snapped. He said, "You can go to hell, you and your whole family." Just like that. For Michael, it was crushing. Berry Gordy wasn't just a boss. He had been the only one who could quiet his dad, the man who had seen Michael's talent from the start. And now he turned cold, shut the door, just like that. Michael didn't celebrate with the others. He shut down, he pulled away, and while the world kept turning, only one person reached out to comfort him: Diana Ross. In 1977, she showed up at the Jackson home with some news. She landed the lead in the new film called The Wiz, a musical adaptation of The Wizard of Oz. And guess what? She wanted Michael to play the Scarecrow. It was the escape he desperately needed. Michael jumped at the chance, but of course there was one problem: Joseph. He didn't want Michael's solo fame to grow any bigger. He wanted the spotlight to stay on the group. But Diana wouldn't back down. She convinced Joseph to let him go. And that summer, Michael flew to New York, alone, for the first time. He was 90 years old, and the city opened up in front of him like magic. The lights, the freedom, the rhythm of the streets, it was everything his hometown wasn't. Michael threw himself into filming The Wiz. He soaked it all in, watching actors work, copying their techniques, learning how a movie set really operated. He even started doing his own makeup, obsessing over every detail. And that's when he met someone who would change his life: Quincy Jones. Jones was composing the music for the film. After a few conversations, he told Michael, "We would work together sometime." For Michael, it was surreal. Quincy Jones wanted to collaborate with him. But that wasn't the only turning point in New York. One night, Michael found himself at the legendary Studio 54, a place with celebrities, artists, and visionaries. And that's where he overheard Andy Warhol say something that stuck with him forever: "You have to convince people you're a genius and always be unique." Michael took that to heart. It wasn't enough to sing well. He needed an image, something people would never forget. And one day on set, he found it. He discovered an old gangster-style hat and started wearing it. And it just worked. Then, one night while washing off his makeup before a party, he noticed something strange: a small white spot on his hand. He tried to scrub it off. It wouldn't go away. Panic set in. He locked himself in the bathroom for over 30 minutes, terrified. For someone battling body dysmorphia, a white spot on his dark skin felt like a nightmare. He needed to hide it, fast. So he grabbed a white glove from the makeup room and wore it to the party. That night, the iconic look was born. The hat and the single white glove. Now let's pause for a second and talk about that spot on his hand. That wasn't makeup, it wasn't bleach. It was something called vitiligo, a skin condition that causes patches of pigment to disappear. The cause? Well, it's still a mystery. Sometimes it appears suddenly. Think of model Winnie Harlow. You've probably seen her on fashion runways. Many people still believe Michael Jackson lightened his skin on purpose in the 90s. But here's the truth. He had vitiligo. He didn't find out for sure until years later. Back in '77, he just kept moving forward. He finished filming The Wiz, energized by the experience and by Quincy Jones. Then he returned to California to his family. Once home, the Jacksons got back to work. They recorded a new album together, and their first single, Destiny, became a big hit across the US. And then came the moment Michael had been waiting for. Walter Yetnikov, the same record executive who brought the Jackson to Epic, pulled Michael aside. He said it was time, Michael should go solo. Michael agreed instantly. But when Joseph heard about it, he exploded. He cursed his son out, told him he would never make on his own, that he was nothing without the group. But Michael didn't back down. He called Quincy Jones. And over the next 6 months, they poured their hearts into a new album. Quincy brought in musical giants, Paul McCartney, Stevie Wonder, and together they created something groundbreaking. It was a mix of funk, soul, disco, and something else entirely, something uniquely Michael. When the album was finished, they gave it a name that said it all: Off the Wall. In August 1979, the album Off the Wall finally hit the shelves and exploded. Within just 2 months, it had sold over 1 million copies. Michael Jackson had done it. He wasn't just a teen idol anymore. He was a Grammy winner, one of the most popular and youngest artists in America. But for Michael, that still wasn't enough. He didn't just want success. He wanted the kind of success no one had ever seen before. He wanted to release the biggest album in music history, and quietly, he'd also make another decision. He was ready to break away from his father, from his brothers, from the group. And he picked the perfect moment to do it. 29th August 1979, Michael's 21st birthday. The family threw a dinner party at the house. Everyone was there, smiling, eating, celebrating. And then, halfway through the evening, Michael stood up. "I'm an adult now," he said. "From this day on, I'll be managing all my own affairs." At first, everyone laughed, thinking it was just one of his playful remarks. Then Michael reached into his pocket and handed Joseph a paper. It was a letter of resignation. Silence. And just like that, he walked out the door. Gone. For the next 3 days, no one knew where he was. Friends, musicians, producers, everyone was calling around. Some even thought about going to the police. Then suddenly, Michael appeared. He walked into the house with his face bandaged. Everyone froze. What happened? Had he been attacked? Was it an accident? But no, it wasn't that. Michael had undergone his first plastic surgery, a rhinoplasty. This wide nose he'd been mocked for the whole life, especially by his brothers, was now gone. On his 21st birthday, Michael Jackson had changed his face, and his future. That moment was a line in the sand. Everything before 29th August 1979 was the story of a gifted, vulnerable boy living under control and criticism. After was the story of a man who was done asking for permission. A man who would stop at nothing to become the greatest artist on earth, even if it meant rewriting the rules. Fast forward to the early 80s, Michael is in England working on a song called Say 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 with no other than Paul McCartney. After the studio session, Paul invites Michael to his house for a visit. They're relaxing, chatting, and then Paul shifts the conversation. He starts talking about business. Paul explains how he's been buying the rights to famous songs, making money of his hits written by others. Then he adds something curious. He's even thinking about buying the rights to the Beatles catalog someday. Michael listens, notes, and then says casually, "You know, Paul, one day I'm going to buy those rights." Paul just laughs. Later, the two of them begin filming the video for Say Say Say. For the shoot, Paul rents a huge ranch, Psycho Marvelle. When Michael arrives, he likes stepping into another world. He turns to Paul and says, "I'm going to buy this place too. Maybe build my own Disneyland." The friendship between them is strong. They're vibing, but Michael's mind is already racing ahead. He's not just enjoying the moment, he's plotting the next move. Because in April 1982, he begins work on what he convinced he would be the greatest album ever made. And he doesn't take chances. He calls in Quincy Jones again as producer, and this time Michael pours everything into the project. Every cent he has, every hour of every day. He practically lives in the studio, writing, rewriting, recording. So many songs are created that Quincy Jones spends 4 months just choosing which ones to include. And he wants 9 tracks, that's it. But Michael has one more. It's a strange, haunting song he wrote after receiving a disturbing fan letter. A girl claimed she was pregnant with his child and threatened that he would take her own life if he didn't respond. This letter unsettled him, it stuck with him, and out of that came a song. Quincy wasn't sure it fit the album, but Michael insisted. And eventually, Quincy agreed to include it. The song? Billie Jean. The album? Thriller. 29th November 1982. The album Thriller finally hits store shelves. And what happens next? Nothing short of a cultural earthquake. Thriller doesn't just sell, it dominates, it shatters records, tops every chart imaginable, and practically takes over the radio. Song after song, Billie Jean, Beat It, Thriller, critics, they don't hold back. They call it a masterpiece. They say Michael Jackson has pushed himself further than any pop artist before. They say he's rewritten what pop music can be. And you know what? They're right. With Thriller, Michael doesn't just become a superstar. He becomes a global icon. The album makes him a fortune and, more importantly, fulfills his dream. It becomes the best-selling album of all time, a record that still holds to this day. But Michael, he's not done. He wants to go even further, higher. He turns his attention to music videos, but not just ordinary music videos. He wants to reinvent them, turn them into cinematic events. He starts with Billie Jean, then Beat It, but it's Thriller where he goes all in. He doesn't just shoot a music video, he creates a full-blown 13-minute short film. Zombies, makeup, dance routines, horror movie vibes. Michael is involved in every step, from choreography to editing. He even pours in $500,000 of his own money to make it perfect. And it works. When Thriller airs on MTV, the phones don't stop ringing. People are begging the network to play it again and again. Now picture this. Somewhere in Tennessee, a young boy glued to the screen. His eyes are wide, his mouth open. He watches the dance, the zombies, the magic, and dreams of the one day being just like Michael Jackson. That's boy name? Justin Timberlake. Thriller didn't just break records, it changed the game. It showed that world that music videos didn't have to be boring stage performances. They could be stories, films, works of art. And Michael? He became the biggest star on the planet. Riding this wave, he signs a multi-million-dollar deal with the Pepsi. He becomes their main ambassador, stars in huge commercials, and even convinces Pepsi to sponsor his tours. He starts rubbing shoulders with the world leaders. At one point, he even meets President Ronald Reagan, wearing a military-style jacket, naturally. The meeting makes headlines everywhere. People joke, the President of the United States just met the King of the United States. But Michael wants more. He's not done proving himself. He wants to deliver a few more knockout blows to silence anyone who would still doubt that he's the king. One of those moments comes at 25th anniversary of Motown Records. Gordy invites him to perform with his brothers, and Michael agrees. But with one condition. He gets to perform solo after the Jackson 5 set. Gordy says yes. On the night of this show, Michael takes the stage in a glittering suit, a single white glove catching the light. He sings with his brothers, smiling for the crowd. But then, the mood shifts. He steps up to the mic. Of course, I love the songs we used to sing, he says, but I love my new songs even more. And then, those unmistakable notes begin to play. Billie Jean. The lights dim, the beat kicks in, and then he glides. No one had ever seen anything like this. One moment he's standing still, the next he's floating across the stage. Not walking, not dancing, sliding. It was the moonwalk. The audience erupts. It looked impossible, like magic, like he wasn't bound by gravity. From that night on, Michael Jackson wasn't just a pop star. He was a phenomenon, something not of this world. Now, let's be honest, Michael didn't invent the moonwalk. Similar moves had been done before by Charlie Chaplin, James Brown, even David Bowie. But here's the thing, he made it iconic. He made it perfect. He performed it with such control, such mystery, such presence, that it became his forever. Whenever you think of the moonwalk, who comes to mind? Exactly. It's 1984 and Michael Jackson is on top of the world. At the Grammy Awards that year, he sweeps the ceremony, taking home 8 trophies, a record. Thriller is the biggest album on the planet. His music videos are playing constantly on MTV. Every move he makes becomes a global event. But behind the glittering awards and screaming fans, something darker is happening. Michael still hates what he sees in the mirror. The white patches on his skin are spreading. He doesn't know why, and neither do his doctors. His nose, reshaped once already, no longer feels right to him. So he goes under the knife again. This time he has the bridge refined. Then he has his wisdom teeth removed. Not because of dental issues, but to slim his face, make it appear narrower. After the surgeries, he starts wearing a medical mask in public. The tabloids pounce. They say he's terrified of germs, that he's become a paranoid germaphobe. They write endless articles about his clothes, his mask and his weirdness. Michael is furious, but instead of firing back, he retreats, composes himself, and keeps delivering hit after hit. In 1985, he makes one of the most controversial and brilliant moves. He tells his lawyers to make an offer, a big one. And that summer, Michael Jackson becomes the new owner of the publishing rights to Beatles' music catalog. Tens of millions of dollars, global headlines, shockwaves through the industry. Paul McCartney is livid. He calls Jackson a traitor, publicly slams him. Privately, he's devastated. Michael responds calmly. It's just a business. And he's not wrong. Years earlier, Paul had explained this exact strategy to him, even warned him about the Beatles catalog. Michael had simply taken the lesson to heart, maybe too well. Their friendship ends. Paul starts calling Michael a global villain. But Michael, he doesn't care. His mission is bigger than opinions. He's not here to be liked. He's here to become untouchable. An anthem created to raise money for famine relief in Africa. It's a massive success, a moment of unity, a reminder that yes, Michael still has a heart underneath his ambition. But comes the next mountain to climb, a new album. Michael wants it to be even bigger than Thriller. He starts dreaming big, inviting legends like Stevie Wonder, Freddie Mercury, Barbra Streisand, Whitney Houston. But reality doesn't match the vision. Only Stevie agrees. Michael stops sleeping, lives in the studio, grows more frustrated by the day, even clashes with Quincy Jones, blaming him for not securing the dream collaborators, blaming the sound, the mixes, everything. It's a struggle, pure and simple. But finally, in August 1987, the album is finished. The title? Bad. And it delivers. The songs Bad and Smooth Criminal become instant hits. As usual, Michael doesn't just release the songs, he turns them into cinematic experiences. The Bad video is directed by none other than Martin Scorsese. And in Smooth Criminal, Michael introduces a move that no one sees coming. The anti-gravity lean. At first, people think it's a camera trick, special effects, wires, maybe it was for a video. But then, Michael performs it live, on stage, in front of thousands of people. And he does it without wires, no tricks visible. He leans forward, almost horizontal, and somehow doesn't fall. The crowd loses it. It's not just a dance move, it's a moment that makes people believe he might be he's not a human. And yes, there is a secret. I think most of you already know it. Inside of the heels of Michael's shoes, there were special drilled holes. On stage, small pegs rise from beneath the floor, and the exact moment he steps into position. He hooks in, leans forward, and magic happens. Today, you can watch the whole trick in HD, that HD recording of Smooth Criminal performing in Munich, 1997. It's online. Look closely, you can see the pegs retract after the move. But let's get back to the album. Bad sells millions. It's a massive hit by any measure. But to Michael, it's not a thriller. And because of that, he sees it as a failure. That feeling of being past his prime starts to eat at him. He channels that frustration into more surgeries. Another nose job, a chin dimple. With his new look, he launches a world tour, a huge one. 125 concerts, a year and a half on the road. Every show sold out. Jackson Mania sweeps the globe. And it's not just about the music. In every city, Michael visits children's hospitals. He donates enormous amounts to charity, quietly, without press. It's like he's living two lives, one on stage, commanding millions, and another off stage, quietly trying to heal both the world and maybe a little bit of himself. As the bad tour nears to its end, Michael Jackson finds himself back near a familiar place, Sycamore Valley, the ranch where he once filmed a video with Paul McCartney. But now things are different. Michael is unimaginably wealthy. He can afford everything. So, like he once promised, he buys the ranch. And then he turns it into a dream. He builds a railroad, carnival rides, a massive swimming pool, and even a zoo. Not a petting zoo, a full-scale exotic animal sanctuary. Then comes the mansion, elegant, sprawling, complete with private movie theater and guest rooms fitted with the medical beds just for sick children. And right at the entrance, under the California sun, he plants a wishing tree where every child who visits can hang a note with their dreams. When it's all done, he gives the place a name, Neverland, and it's exactly what it sounds like. A fairy tale come to life. Soon, guests start arriving. Michael's nephews, other artists' friends and children battling illness from around the world. And MTV runs specials showing Jackson welcoming them personally. He rides the carousel with them, jumps into haystacks and laughs like a kid himself. In one of now famous clips video, he tosses Home Alone star Macaulay Culkin into a pile of hay. Everyone's smiling for a while. It's a pure joy. But we'll come back to Neverland later. Because in 1991, Michael is ready to shake the music world again. That year, he releases Dangerous, an album that shows a more mature, complex side of him. It's sonically rich and thematically bold. One track tackles the AIDS crisis, another features a spoken word piece with the Princess of Monaco, exploring hidden love. But the song that truly defines the album, Black or White, is the bold anthem against racism, a call for unity. Michael sings with urgency. It don't matter if you're black or white. The message is powerful, the world listens, but then the video drops and everything explodes. Michael appears in the video with visibly lighter skin. His vitiligo has now advanced so far, it's unmistakable. But the media doesn't care about medical facts. The criticism is brutal. He accused of hypocrisy, of preaching about race, while allegedly trying to erase his own black identity. And it breaks him. Once again, Michael retreats. And once again, he turns to plastic surgery. It becomes an escape, an addiction. His face changes. His recovery is slow, complicated by stress and exhaustion. Doctors prescribe tranquilizers to manage the medication and care. Michael hires a personal nurse, Debbie Rowe. She becomes a key figure in his life. Michael starts appearing in public under large umbrellas. The medical mask returns. Rumors swirl. Tabloids run wild with theories. That's he's dying, he's hiding something, that he's lost his mind. Finally, Michael had enough. He invites Oprah Winfrey to Neverland. The world is watching. He gives her a tour of his fantasy estate. Then, sitting down together, he opens up about his childhood, about the loneliness, and for the first time publicly, he confirms what many suspected. He has vitiligo. No, he didn't bleach his skin. No, he's not trying to be white. It's a moment of truth, and it shatters TV ratings. Shortly after, he launches the Dangerous World Tour. He travels across South America, Asia, Europe. The shows are spectacular. The crowds are massive. For a moment, it feels like the magic is back. But then it isn't, because suddenly a storm hits. News breaks in the US. Michael Jackson is being accused of child molestation. The claim comes from Evan Chandler, a dentist and screenwriter. He says his 13-year-old son, Jordan, started acting strange and eventually confessed that Michael had abused him. The world freezes. The headlines are relentless. TV, radio, newspapers, they all run with it. Jackson's legal team scrambles. They try to settle quietly, but Chandler refuses. He gives interviews and insists it happened. Michael's team panics. They tell him not to return to the US to avoid a possible arrest. Jackson, now in England, checks into a hospital, reportedly suffering from exhaustion. Behind the scenes, his PR team works around the clock. They leak that he's unwell. They rally celebrity supporters to speak out. Stars say Michael would never harm a child, that it's all lies, a setup. But despite the efforts, the damage is done. Pepsi drops him. The media frenzy grows. Former employees, bodyguards, mates, drivers start stepping forward, claiming they saw suspicious things. But during interrogations, they struggle to offer anything concrete. People begin to suspect that some of them are being pressured or even bribed. And Michael, he's watching his world begin to crack. Just when things couldn't get more surreal, something unexpected happens. Michael Jackson gets a call from Lisa Marie Presley, Elvis' daughter. She reaches out while he's in the hospital, offers support, stays on the line. They start talking a lot, and soon the media has a new headline. Michael Jackson is in love with the king of rock and roll's daughter. Was it real or just a PR move to clean up the image? No one really knows, maybe both, but one thing's for sure. Jackson's legal and PR teams go into overdrive. They pull every possible lever to protect his name. In December 1993, his lawyers tell him the news. He wouldn't be arrested when he comes back to the US, but he'll need to undergo a private police examination. Not a trial, a controlled interrogation at home. Michael returns to Neverland. Outside, the crowd is massive. Reporters, helicopters, fans with signs. Inside, it's a different scene entirely. The police arrive quietly and they begin a physical examination of Michael's body, trying to match it to accuser's description. It breaks him. Michael goes into full-blown hysteria, but there's no way out. The examination lasts over an hour. The next day, he releases a video message to the world, declaring his innocence, asking people not to rush to judgment. Then, on the advice of his legal team, Jackson does something that will follow him forever. He pays the Chandler family $20 million to settle the case. They drop the lawsuit. Charges are never filed. This was the first official accusation of child molestation against Michael Jackson. And to many, it's telling he never fought in court. He never took the stand, he stayed overseas, but Jackson wasn't done playing the media game, not even close. To flip the narrative, he proposes to Lisa Marie Presley. Paparazzi are invited, flashbulbs go off, and the headlines shift overnight. Now the story isn't about scandal, it's about romance, about royalty meeting royalty. The distraction works, the scandal fades. In 1995, Jackson releases a new album, History. Past, present and future. It's bold, it's theatrical, and commercially, it's a hit. The following year, he launches the History World Tour. This time the shows are even bigger. Tanks roll into stage, dancers in military uniforms. Jackson stands in the center, preaching unity, peace, revolution through music. The second half of the 90s is wild. In 1996, out of nowhere, Jackson divorces with Lisa Marie. Then he drops another bombshell. He's marrying his longtime nurse, Debbie Rowe. A year later, they have a son, Prince Michael Jackson first. In 1998, they welcome a daughter, Paris Michael Catherine Jackson. Shortly after Paris is born, Jackson and Debbie divorce. And that's when the rumors really pick up steam. Some believe the entire relationship was staged, that Debbie was just a surrogate, that after the children were born, she was paid $8 million and handed full custody back to Jackson. And then the decade changes. The 90s fade into 2000s, and with them, Jackson's place in the pop spotlight. In 2001, he releases Invincible, but the name turns into ironic. The album underperforms. New artists dominating. The world is moving on. Michael retreats to Neverland. He spends millions on his children. And in 2002, a third child born, Prince Michael Jackson II. Again, reportedly via surrogate. That same year, Jackson agrees to something risky, a documentary called Living with Michael Jackson. When it airs, audience see him at home, playing with kids, giving them gifts, laughing. At one moment, a young boy named Gavin Arvizo rests on Michael's shoulder. And that one scene lights the match. Another scandal explodes. Journalists ask the question all over again. Is Michael Jackson a danger to children? Gavin's parents file a lawsuit. And just like that, Jackson is back in the storm. Jackson's lawyers are quick to respond. They say the new accusations are false, just another attempt to get money. This time, though, they don't want a quiet settlement. They demand a public trial so Michael can clear his name in front of the entire world. He's barely holding it together. He's dependent on painkillers and sedatives. His hands tremble. He's terrified not just of the trial itself, but of being humiliated in court, of being seen broken. So he makes a decision. He gathers his children and leaves the United States. His destination? Bahrain, a place far from cameras, the headlines and the pressure. The trial begins without him and it drags on for 2 years. Hundreds of witnesses are called. Thousands of journalists cover every detail. Around the world, people follow every twist, every rumor. But while the world watches, Michael's world shrinks. Friends disappear. Sponsors walk away. No celebrities come to his defense this time. It's hard not to notice. This is the second time he's been accused. And for many people, once is enough. Twice, that's too much. And yet, in June 2005, the verdict comes in. Not guilty. But the win doesn't feel like a victory. Over those 2 years, he burned through a fortune. By the time the court says he's free, he's entirely broke. And worse, his image is shattered. He's no longer the king of pop. He became a punchline, a cautionary tale. That year, the most popular Halloween costume in America is a military jacket, a white glove, and a face people no longer admire, but mock. After the trial, Michael disappears. For 4 years, he's barely seen. No albums, no interviews, no shows. But then, 2009, out of nowhere, he announced something no one expected. A farewell tour. This is it. It starts with 10 concerts at London's O2 Arena. The second tickets go to sale, gone instantly. The hype is massive, is insane. Organizers bump the number of shows up to 50. Michael dives into rehearsals. This is going to be his moment, his return, his redemption. He plans every detail himself, every dance move, every beat, every light. He wants the world to remember why they fell in love with him for the first place. He calls it the greatest show the world will ever see. And maybe it would have been, but it never happens. On 25th June 2009, just a few weeks before opening night, Michael cancels rehearsal. Says he's too exhausted. He goes back to the house he's renting in West LA, spends most of the day in silence. After lunch, he decides to rest. Before he lays down, his personal physician, Dr. Conrad Murray, gives him a powerful sedative, something to help him sleep, then leaves him alone. 2 hours later, Murray returns to check on him and finds something no one ever wanted to see. Michael is lying in bed. His eyes and mouth are open. He's not breathing. Murray scrambles, finds a faint pulse in the femoral artery. There's still a chance. He tries CPR, desperate, alone. It's not working. He calls a security guard, tells him to call 911. Paramedics arrive quickly and rush Jackson to the hospital. Doctors fight to bring him back, but they can't. At 2:26, Michael Jackson is pronounced dead. News of Michael Jackson's death spreads across the globe like wildfire. Within minutes, every major media outlet drops what it's doing. Reporters swarm the hospital in Los Angeles. The internet quite literally begins to crash. Some websites go offline from the sheer number of visitors trying to confirm the news. Some public figures criticize the chaos. People have lost their minds, they say. There are more important things going on in the world, but no one listens. The world is locked in grief, frozen, focused entirely on one thing: the sudden death of Michael Jackson. And then comes the sales surge. Jackson's albums start flying off the shelves. On Amazon, sales jumped by 721 times. Thriller climbs straight to the top of the iTunes charts. Even in death, Michael dominates the industry, breaks records, reclaims #1. There is something cruelly poetic in that, but people want answers. What really happened? After medical tests and investigation, the official cause of death is released: an overdose of powerful sedatives. To put it plainly, Conrad Murray gave him one injection too many. It was fatal. On July 7, 2009, a public memorial is held at the Staples Center in Los Angeles, the same place that hosted the Grammys. Celebrities from every corner of entertainment gather to say goodbye. The event is broadcast live around the world. It's estimated that 1 billion people watched, but Jackson's casket is closed. No one sees the body. And that opens the floodgates for conspiracy theories. Some say Michael faked his death to escape debt. Others believe it was an inside job, a government cover-up, or even a hit ordered by figures in the music industry. There are theories that Dr. Murray was a pawn, or the theory that Jackson still alive, he's living on a remote island. Even in death, Michael Jackson leaves behind mystery, myths, questions. The memorial was in July, and the actual burial didn't happen until September 3rd, almost 2 months later. And once again, no one saw the body. No open casket, no final image. His story began in a ghost town, and in many ways it became a ghost himself. This was the story of Michael Jackson. If you want to watch something else, to read something else, then start with the books. Read Michael Jackson, The Magic, The Madness, the whole story by Randy Carbarelli. And don't miss Jackson's own autobiography, Moonwalk. As for films, check out the powerful behind-the-scenes documentary Michael Jackson's This Is It, a look at the rehearsals for the tour that never happened. And of course, watch Living Neverland, the controversial film that features testimonials from other children who spent time in Neverland. Whether you believe it or not, it's part of the legacy. Anyway, thank you. Good night.